to excuse the slight caffeination of myself throughout this video. I had like 6 cups of coffee this morning and I can't feel my toes. We're just gonna take it slow and make it through this together. Oh! Hey guys, what's up? It's Haley. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new, hi, I'm Haunted. I've made videos about my paranormal experiences before, about my friend getting possessed, about growing up in a haunted house, about the ghost that was like living in my apartment and catching a bunch of weird stuff on camera, but I haven't told this story yet, and I know how much you guys love ghost stories, and kind of as a thank you for the overwhelming amount of support that I've been getting on my last video and kind of what's happening in my life right now. If you don't really know what I'm talking about, feel free to check out my latest video, and everything will kind of make sense, but it's just been amazing. I'm so completely and totally in love with you guys right now. You are the absolute best, so I wanted to make this video for you guys because I know you're gonna go absolutely crazy over it because for some reason you guys enjoy having your pants just scared right off. This video also, by the way, is a collab with an amazing YouTuber and just person who I have gotten to know over the past couple days. His name is James, and his channel, Day with James, is pretty paranormally themed. The poor guy lives in a haunted house currently, so he's just been kind of documenting that, but he does other stuff too. I just feel like if you guys like my ghosty videos, you'll really like what he does. He also has a British accent, so I mean, really, he could be talking about chapstick and socks and it would still be interesting to me. But go check out his channel, make sure you subscribe, comment on his most recent video, which I think is also a ghost type story, and let him know that I sent you. I think we're actually going to be working on an in-person collab later next year if I can get myself to England. He's also just a great guy, so I know you guys are going to love him. But for today's video, I'm going to be telling you guys about my most insane Ouija board story. Not my only Ouija board story, because I was an idiot child and played around with those way more than I should have growing up, which was not my fault. My family has always been relatively open to that realm of the universe. There's actually 2 people on my mom's side who I believe, if they're not actual like mediums or psychics, are just immensely sensitive to that kind of stuff. So I was never really taught to be afraid of Ouija boards or afraid of spirits and ghosts. I mean, I still was, but I had a handle, a little bit at least, on how to conduct myself when doing stuff like this and how to be respectful and how to be careful, and just that it's not something you play around with nonchalantly. Like, you have to go in with a certain mindset and all of this kooky stuff. You know how I am with like energies and vibes and everything. I get that from my family, so I understood that this wasn't something to be taken lightly. And just jumping into the story, which by the way has 2 parts, so I'm going to upload this bit of it now, and then I will tell the rest of this story at a certain point. But funnily enough, I'm telling the second half of the story now because I think it's more interesting, but then the first half of the story is also kind of cool, so it'll come out later. That doesn't make any sense. I didn't need to tell you that. Anyway, moving on. I was in high school. I was a junior, and at this point, all of my friends were seniors. I had a really close group of friends. There were 4 of us girls, myself included. Sophie, who is my current best friend and was my best friend back then as well, and then 2 other girls who I don't really talk to anymore, so just for privacy purposes, as if I'm cool enough for that, but I'm just gonna change their names, and we're gonna call them Maria and Lucy. So it was me, Sophie, Maria, and Lucy. Okay, super quick, I'm actually Skyping Sophie right now. This is my current best friend, but she was my best friend back then. She was there that night, and I wanted you guys to hear it from somebody else, just so you know that I'm not actually insane and or a liar.
Oh my god, no, that was literally probably the creepiest night ever. I still get freaked out when I think about it.
Yeah, okay, there you go. I'm not making this up. She was there. Back to the story. So the 4 girls, the 4 of us, we were super close, but then there was also a group of guys, mostly Sophie's stepbrothers and then their friends that we would hang out with as well. And for the most part, we spent our weekends up at Sophie's house, which was, even when creepy things weren't happening, it was so far in the middle of nowhere that it was hard not to feel isolated, even when we were just like having a good time. This particular weekend though, there was a hurricane, and I live in Western Massachusetts, so it's not like we were expecting to be horribly affected, but I mean, we did get a lot of wind, we got a lot of rain. I mean, people's houses got destroyed, trees fell down in the middle of the road, cars got crushed. It was a bit intense, to be honest, and so we had actually, I think we'd gotten a couple of days off of school. Everybody had been preparing, getting groceries, getting supplies. People were even boarding up their windows. It was a lot. This was Hurricane Sandy, by the way, so it was 2012, and Maria thought it would be a really cute idea if we had like a hurricane sleepover party. It was really cute. She went all out. She got board games and snacks. Side note though, her house was equally, if not more so, completely out in the middle of absolutely nowhere. It was in the middle of these woods, 20 minutes away from town or just civilization. All four of the girls are at Maria's house, and we're just kind of sitting around talking, waiting for the bad weather to start, and then it does, and the power goes out. And Maria, for some reason, wanted to do a Ouija board really badly. And so because we are insane people, we went into like this really creepy back corner cellar room of Maria's house, and we ripped up pieces of paper and like made a makeshift Ouija board, because it's not the actual board that you can like buy at Target that holds the power. It's the whole process of sitting down and the ceremony and like inviting the spirits. I'm actually going to glaze over a lot of this in this video, because when we were at Maria's house, for the most part, the 3 or 4 main spiritual experiences we had with the Ouija board at her house were positive and were actually really cool and interesting, and I want to talk about it at some point, but if I included that in this video, we would be here for an actual hour. So at a certain point, a particular spirit came through that was very different than anything we had been dealing with throughout that evening, spelling out really creepy, just very nope words like kill, slice, murder, all that generic good fun stuff. It started saying stuff like I'll see you soon too, and this was just a spirit that had kind of come out of nowhere into our session, and it had freaked out my friend Lucy so much that she yanked her hands off of the dial, which you're really very supposed to not do, because supposedly it opens you up to like possession and crazy shit like that. Also, yeah, okay, so we had been talking to spirits throughout the evening for like an hour or so at this point, and Maria had dogs, and they were completely mellow, completely chill, hadn't gone crazy at all, and then when this energy kind of entered into our circle or into our space, they started barking, they started going insane. She had 2 little Yorkies, and they were losing their mind, and it just, not only was it's saying weird things and really particularly like freaking Lucy out, but it just made all of us, we talked about this later, it made all of us feel sick, like we felt nauseous, and so we closed out that session, and it's late, the power's out, we weren't tired and we were freaking out, so we decided to go to Sophie's house, which was about 5 minutes, 10 minutes away from Maria's, because Sophie's house had power and Maria's house didn't, and after the experience we had just had sitting around in the dark wasn't our first choice. So we collectively drive up to Sophie's house, and when we get there, all of our guy friends are there. There's like 6 or 7 of them. I think they had kind of had the same idea of all getting together for the hurricane, but there were a bunch of people there that we didn't actually know. Some of the guys that were our friends had brought friends of their own, so there were a lot more people than were usually there, and so we arrive and we're telling everybody like, oh my god, this is crazy, like we did a Ouija board, this really creepy thing had happened, but also these really cool things had happened, and so these guys are just laughing at us, blowing us off completely. I think one of them kind of was on board and was like, oh yeah, that's so cool, but for the most part they were just scoffing at us, like not really taking it seriously at all, and so we were like, okay, we'll show you, we'll do it here. You'll see we're not crazy. So I start setting up the Ouija board in the living room, and we start, and at first everything's fine, and I think I remember a spirit coming through for Sophie's stepbrother, kind of talking about sports and some inside jokes with him that nobody else really could have known about, and he was kind of freaking out because there was no way that anybody in the room could have known what this spirit had been saying, but it was all relatively playful until we started another session, and a spirit came through for one of our friends' friends, so one of the guys that we didn't really know that well. We'll call him Ian, and this spirit was talking to Ian about some sort of accident, claiming that Ian was at fault and saying like really cryptic things like I know what you did, listing off an address, really like very, very weird stuff that was really getting to Ian, and Ian was, the whole mood of the room shifted. He was freaking out. We didn't know him very well either, so we didn't know how, like, we just didn't understand his personality well enough to understand that this was just so not like him. He actually left the house because he was so freaked out, and he couldn't get in his car and drive away because at this point the weather had picked up to a point that it would have been really unsafe to drive. He's outside on the porch just kind of trying to get his head together, and then all of a sudden, we're all still in the living room, and all of a sudden our friend, who we will call Mike, who is extremely religious and had already been just completely losing his mind about the fact that we were doing this, was against it completely, did not want anything, just really, really, really not a fan. He screamed and he ran into the other room, tearing up, might have even actually been crying, claiming that he had seen a face outside of the window. I literally have goosebumps. It was so disturbing to see him so upset because he was a macho guy. He was always very cool, calm, and collected. Like, it was very outside of his character to be this worked up, to be this panicked, to show that much of emotion. Like, he was freaked. Very, 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 very horrified. He said the face looked like a mask, and that it looked like it was smiling in a really creepy way, and that it was only there for a second or two, but that he was completely sure, and that it looked solid. And so at this point, everybody is in the room with him, in like the boys' room, consoling him. He's literally hunched over in the corner, praying, and I realize, as one of the more experienced Ouija board people, that we never closed out the session, which you are really, really, really not supposed to do. First Ian freaked out and ran away, then Mike screamed and ran into the other room, and everybody just kind of yanked their hands off of the dial and went to go deal with both situations. And you're just so nuts. It's just such a bad, stupid thing to do because it leaves that energy and that door essentially open. So I started to freak out, and I started to frantically try to get everybody who had their hands on the dial back in the circle so that we could close out the session and just make sure that everything had been completely cut off. There were no ties, nothing had connected to anybody, because that's like my biggest fear in the entire world. And granted, Haley, if that's your biggest fear, you shouldn't really be playing with the Ouija board. I know, I promise I never ever will again. But I was just trying to get everybody who had their hands on the dial back in the circle so that we could just easily close out the session. And it had been me, Mike, Lucy, and Ian who had been touching the dial. Everybody's just freaking out though, so it was really hard to kind of pull people together and do this. Finally, the people who needed to be were gathered around the board, ready to close it out. We were all sitting around the board, and out of absolutely nowhere, Lucy stands up with no expression on her face. I think her eyes might have even been closed. She stands up and she starts to walk around the house, and it's the living room and the kitchen are connected. There's no like wall, so she's just kind of walking in between the living room and the kitchen, bumping into furniture, not responding when people are calling her. She was whispering stuff under her breath that nobody could understand. It didn't even sound like it was in English. It was just absolutely insane. And she had just been kind of bumping her way through the living room into the kitchen, and she just put her face in a corner in the kitchen and just stood there. And she wasn't talking anymore, she wasn't muttering anymore, she was just standing with her face in the corner of the kitchen, and it was the most bizarre thing I had ever seen in my life. Everybody obviously was completely and totally horrified, mystified, didn't understand what was going on. Mike, though, was out of everyone, losing it entirely, and he was adamant that everybody just needed to get in the car and we needed to drive to a church, which I think we actually were like Googling where the nearest church was, but it was too windy. The weather was too bad. Literally, we were in the middle of nowhere. The roads to get down off of this mountain that we were at the top of were treacherous even when the weather was fine, so it was just it was way too dangerous for us to get in the car and drive. So let me just set the scene really quick so you understand where everybody is, because this is where Lucy is in the kitchen with her face in the corner. Everybody else is in kind of a group at the edge of the kitchen. Mike is standing by the door trying to like yell at everybody to get in the car, like we have to go. We were all just talking back and forth, and Mike's necklace, which he is ridiculously attached to, I don't know, okay, I didn't see this happen, but 3 other people did see it. His necklace lifted, yanked, and fell with nobody touching it, like on its own. It lifted up, was pulled off, and fell to the ground. And it was a cross necklace or it was some religious necklace, and it was lifted up, pulled, and then fell to the ground. I didn't see this because I was looking at Lucy, but the 3 other people who were like talking to Mike about getting in the car and stuff saw this with their own eyes, said that it had happened, and the minute that Mike's necklace hit the floor, the energy lifted and everything was fine and everything was okay. We were all like weirdly calm, actually. Lucy seemed really disoriented and really tired, but she seemed to kind of understand what had happened. I don't know. I'm getting like really hot reliving this. It was actually horrifying. This is why I will never in my life, ever in my life, go near a Ouija board ever again. Not ever gonna happen, not my thing, not for me, no thank you. The fact that it can even potentially get that crazy is just too much for me personally, but I'm not here to tell you what to do. If you do play around with things like that, just make sure that you're careful, make sure that you're respectful. I don't know, man, really just don't though is the only thing that I can say. I understand that had I not lived through it myself, I wouldn't believe somebody if they said it. So, I don't know, but it was just so much. It was so much. Yeah. Not for me. For the time being, that is it for this video. I'm really sorry that my energy was pretty low. I always feel like that whenever I talk about paranormal stuff because it is just, it's like a little taxing for some reason, even just reliving it and remembering it. I don't know. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I also hope you guys check out James's channel because he's just really, really great. I've absolutely loved getting to know him, and I know you guys are going to really like his videos too. The plan is, as far as I understand, for him to take me to a very haunted place and allow me to embarrass myself on camera as I scream louder than is normal. If you're new, make sure to like and subscribe, join our family, it's pretty great. With that said, I love you all to the moon and back, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!